Here we go. All right. Pulling up the stream real quick.
Dang, I'm trying to get something to work.
Boom, boom, boom.
What is that noise?
That's me, probably.
Okay. I was like,
It's
is
just
there a ball bouncing? That's the noise.
There we go.
Drew, how's it going, dude?
good. Tired, but good.
Why are you tired? I'm not doing anything.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah,
Nah,
I wasn't doing anything at all.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
I'm not kidding, dude. Embarrassing.
We're only 2 days into the week, and I already want it to be over.
It's weird for me because Tuesday is my day off, so I feel like my Monday is Wednesday in a lot of ways. So like starting tomorrow, I have 3 days in a row of 10-hour shifts. So
Oh boy,
yeah,
fun stuff.
we just expanded in a pretty major way our Pokemon section, and so we're not just a little bit of Pokemon cards anymore. We're going for it, and that kind of
Nice.
I'm not excited about it because I know literally nothing about Pokemon. So I'm going to get all these Pokemon kids in there being like, you got any Charmander?
Dude, if kids are asking you for Charmander, that's the easiest thing in the world. I don't know anything about Pokemon.
I know a few of the first ones, and other than that, I don't. I have no idea. But the good thing is I'll just be working behind the counter, and I can't see them anyway, so they have to point them out anyway. So
I don't have to deal with the nerds, am I right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, man. Looks like we got a few people in the chat right now.
Nice.
Say hi in the chat.
If you
Let
love
us know
Pokemon.
what you guys have been watching lately.
Yes.
Oh, Jim, it looks like there's some guy named James that commented. You want to read
Gosh,
that
he
comment?
sounds so cool. I love all of that guy's opinions. We should have him on.
Actually, I don't know about that.
He does have some pretty bad opinions about recasting, though. I will say.
Oh, no, I think he's brave enough to say it. Actually, we need somebody like him out there.
I'm still here. I'm just doing the background for
Lies, deception.
Just look at this. Look at this.
Oh yeah. Oh, hold on.
It's beautiful. Wait, I want to do one. Just trying to remember how to do this.
Pull it up real quick.
People, if you are watching the live, we are going to be reviewing Vertigo here in not too long. We are just getting the last bits of the setup here.
Yeah, we're just getting going.
Yeah.
But seriously, if you're here, let us know you're here. Tell us what's up and tell us what you've been watching lately, because we're gonna start a little bit of that.
Yeah. And then I'd love to know what people think of Vertigo.
Yes.
Let us know what you also let us know what your favorite Hitchcock film is.
Yeah.
Man, honestly, out of I think I've just seen 3 now. They're all so good, I don't even know how to choose.
No, wait a second.
Wait, why is it
Okay.
reversed? I didn't do that. It just automatically reversed it for some reason.
It's not reversed for me.
It's not
It
reversed
is for
either
me.
of you.
That's
It
weird.
is for me, sister.
Nice.
Very good.
Dude, I got like that whole script on lock.
Okay. I haven't even had a chance to listen to the score. Like, how do you know it already?
What do you mean haven't? What do you think I've been listening to for like ever since I finished it? Anytime I've been in my car, just nonstop with this thing.
So good.
I mean, it is. It's amazing.
And yeah, I just found that out. People in the comments, maybe you're just now finding this out. Bernard Herrmann was never even nominated for Best Original Score for any of his collaborations with Hitchcock.
Huh?
That is the most wild thing I think I've ever heard. So
That
like
is crazy.
I mean, we're upset about the Dune thing, but I think it's just one in a very, very, very long line of just things that you go, I guess.
Of course.
Well, that just happened.
Well, and
Yeah.
I mean, did Hans not win for the first Dune? Did he win, or he definitely got nominated? Did he
He got
win?
nominated. I can't remember if he won or not.
I don't think you won.
Okay. Either yeah. So it's not. He did get nominated for the first one too. So at least that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But when you think about North by Northwest, which has an amazing score,
Oh, God.
Psycho, this, holy cow, this one, it's like his scores are unreal. They're so amazing. And it's one thing, like I would have almost been surprised if I was like, he never won, but he was never nominated. And I
That
just
is pretty
find
wild. Did he get nominated and / win for Citizen Kane?
I'm
Which
not
is
sure.
wild that he scored both of those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just the two that have
And
swapped
then it's like
greatest film of all time over the years.
thinking about like this 1941 masterpiece, and then you find out he continued working up through the 70s and ended his career on a little known film of Taxi Driver. Like
Just
that's
a little thing, which I haven't seen, but I understand.
the score is incredible. Its main theme is like it's not what I thought going into it, but it's actually pretty perfect for it. Because he brings some of this kind of classic old Hollywood sound to like the sleazy streets as he's driving the taxi around. I'm like, oh my gosh, this works. It's so cool.
I gotta watch that one. Of course, that's Scorsese. Yeah,
Yeah.
I have to watch a ton of Scorsese.
Turns out
I do
he's
too,
pretty
actually.
great.
Even though I've seen a lot of his films, I still have a lot that I'm missing.
Yeah, I've got some of my own blind spots still.
Wow, this is terrible.
Michael
see
is in a
this?
void.
This is not working well for me.
Uh-oh.
Where?
People are leaving.
Oh,
But
dear.
they're joining again.
That's okay. I'm gonna.
We went from 3 to 7. There we go.
Yeah. For all of you who just joined in, let us know what your favorite Hitchcock film is, and we'd also love to hear some thoughts on Vertigo. We'll get started on the discussion here in just a second.
Do we want to start what we've been watching?
Yeah,
Yes,
let's
sir.
do that. One of y'all start.
James, you go first.
Okay. So since our last episode was on Batman, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Since then, I watched Batman Returns, which I actually liked a decent bit better. I just felt like it was a lot more polished and the world was a lot more like whole by that point. And Bruce is still pretty paper thin, but it felt like a step in the right direction because he at least the scenes he got to share with Selena. I thought the scenes of them on the couch, and then especially the scene of them dancing when they like realized each other's identities. I actually thought that was a really, really good scene. So he had some emotional involvement in the plot that he didn't have at all the first time around. And I thought Michelle Pfeiffer was actually really, the whole duality thing was actually like a presence in that movie of like him trying to find like that being the angle he was trying to speak to her through. And I don't know, it felt nice.
The best I can do right now.
Anyways, yeah, I ended up liking it a good bit better. Then I watched Batman Forever, which is exactly what I remembered, but weirdly, like it's just seeing something so ridiculous, even if it's exactly what you remember, it's just different seeing it than remembering it. You're like, oh, yeah, this is how goofy this movie is. This is like
It's real.
This is, I mean, I would call it a cartoon, but like Batman the Animated Series has infinitely more like maturity to it. So it's like, doesn't even feel like calling it a cartoon works. But all that being said, I really like Batman Forever. But yeah, and then I watched Batman and Robin right after that. And that is just a giant toy commercial, but it worked because I bought all the action figures as a kid and I loved it. And it's still fun to me. And I love Schumacher's Gotham, and he goes even harder in Batman and Robin. There are so like the amount of miniatures and giant like statues and like the racing cars down like the extended arms of these giant Olympian statues and stuff. Like it's kind of cool actually. So I still like it. And then I watched Green Lantern First Flight. It's an animated Green Lantern movie. And I actually really like it. A lot of these DC animated features are like 30 minutes too short. They're so incredibly rushed, and this is definitely the same case there. But I really love Green Lantern, like the character and the lore. It's probably like my favorite. And of all of the DC characters, the extended lore that comes with them is probably my favorite. And it also is the first time any of these animated DC features had a score that made me go, whoa, that was like, did they hire a real composer? Like that was good.
Dang, dude.
Ouch.
Well, I realized less intended to be shade. Well, partly intended to be shade, but also mostly just a compliment to it because it was really good. But that's all I've watched outside of Vertigo.
You watched Vertigo?
Interesting. Yeah, I think I did. I can't really remember much of it though.
Yeah, no, it's a really forgettable film. Oh man,
jokes
Michael,
for anybody who just tried to exit out of the.
Oh, these guys are loonies.
Stay. Don't hit the dislike button. I swear.
Fakers. I mean, you hit any button, it helps.
Dislike.
Sure. Yeah. So I let's see. We watched Batman last week. I also watched Batman Returns, and I went the other way that James went. I actually thought the first one was better, and I thought the second one leaned. Okay, so here's James and I are gonna just part ways. Actually, Drew and James and I are gonna part ways because I don't like Tim Burton's Gotham. I don't like Tim Burton as a director really generally at all. I did like Batman, but it was like the most I could handle of Tim Burton. And I felt that he leaned so much further into his Tim Burtonisms for this. And it was just so goofy at times that it was far goofier than the first one. And all the goofiness fits so well in the first one because it was the Joker. And it just like, it really just matched up really well. I do agree that there was some more polish on some things, and I'm with you guys there. I noticed that right from the beginning. I actually loved the really weirdly dark beginning with Penguin's story. That was pretty crazy.
It felt like a Grimm's fairy tale to me.
Yeah, so I actually was like really hooked at that point, and then it kind of went downhill after that. But I loved Danny DeVito and Michelle Pfeiffer, and the performances were actually really, really great. They really committed to their roles, and I thought they did awesome. This movie's very horny. It is what it is, and those two in the horny scenes together was really interesting. But I'm just not a fan. It comes down to style for me, and Tim Burton is just not my cup of tea. And again, Batman is not a character in these movies.
That's a big sin.
He is so much less of a character in this one. Even I thought he was less of a character than he even was in the first one. I don't remember a single scene of him in this movie.
Bruce's best scene is in this movie.
And I thought multiple scenes were better from the first one. So particularly in the second act. Yeah, I'll stand by that. And
no. Rewatch the scene where they discover each other's identities at the dance. That is by far his best scene.
No, I mean it was good. That was fine. That was fine.
No,
but I mean, I'm just saying.
I'm no, sorry.
That's the deepest they've gone. Like that's unacceptable.
I'm agreeing with you right there.
Yeah.
It's a travesty.
It's ridiculous. And because also Michael Keaton, I still stand by. He's great. I think he's so good in the role. I just wish I want more, so much more. This was a Catwoman Penguin movie. Like it really was. Christopher Walken was great too, by the way. I watched episode 2 of Severance, and it was probably the best episode. It was one of the best episodes of the show so far. If you're not on Severance, James, get on Severance. Seriously. And Drew this season, get on it.
Yeah, I need you.
You really
James,
need to.
If you don't, we're gonna sever you from the podcast.
That's right. That's right. Seriously, it's so good. And then so it's really interesting. The last 2 movies that I've watched are Vertigo and The Brutalist.
Oh,
actually, right. I actually got a chance to go and see The Brutalist up in Fayetteville this past weekend. This has been one of my most anticipated movies of the year. And I'm not going to talk too much about it because we got to get to the movie. But my thoughts are still unsettled on it. I know that it is incredibly well done. It is such a phenomenally well shot movie. The score, I think the score is Oscar deserving. Oscar winning deserving. Absolutely incredible. And just the way that the film was put together. It had I love that it had an intermission too. By the way, normalize intermissions for 3+ hour films.
Yeah.
Not less than that, but 3+ hours. Yes, intermission is great. The performances were unfreaking believable. At the end of the day, I'm still sorting out my feelings on the film as a whole because I love certain things about it, but it's definitely one of those movies that doesn't make you feel good. This is not a feel good movie in any way.
What?
Yeah, not at all. And I knew that going in, but those kinds of movies tend to have to sit with me for a little bit so I can digest them and I can know how I truly feel about them. I still haven't given it a letterboxed score. Like I don't think I can do it right now. But I know that I really appreciate it and I appreciate what it's doing. I don't know that everything fit. I don't know that everything went together as well as I hoped it would. I know I wasn't a fan of the ending, but my thought is I actually really want a second viewing, which is going to be another, like when we talk about Vertigo, I want a second viewing of that movie because of I just feel like I'll appreciate it even more. But on first viewing of The Brutalist, it is a lot and it is so long and dense and hard to watch at times. And so I do feel like I need a second watch to fully grasp everything about it. But man, I do recommend going to see it. It's not easy to watch. Just know that. So, but yeah, that's what I've been watching. Sorry, stuffy.
Yeah, I'm gonna be watching The Brutalist tomorrow, so I'm pretty stoked about that.
I'm excited to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I literally like don't know what to expect about it. Like I've heard all the great things about it, and that's pretty much it because I've just been trying to go in with knowing as little as I can. So,
oh, I will say one thing: just if you're going into it, people have been throwing out There Will Be Blood and Godfather like comparisons with it. Put those out the window. Just don't go in there with that kind of thing in your head. Just let it be what it is. I hate it when people do that. but
that's what made me so excited.
Yeah. Just be careful. I just can't. It's not those to me, but well, yeah. I just wanted to say that.
Maybe it'll be those to me. We'll see.
Maybe it will. Maybe it will. I just wanted to say that because I do feel like if you're going in there expecting one thing, sometimes it's not going to turn out that way. But
cool. Well, I'm looking forward to watching it. And I'll definitely let you guys know what I think about it tomorrow. And then also, by the time we live stream next week, I'm sure I'll be talking about all my thoughts about it. But for what I watched, I also watched Batman Returns, and it's better than the first one in like every way. So yeah, I'll just leave it at that. And then from there, I watched Batman Forever, and I'm a fan. Oh, Jim just disappeared.
He jumped into the river.
That was really funny. But yeah, Batman Forever. Oh, I can't escape. Batman Forever is freaking awesome. I'm a fan. I think that Batman Returns Gotham was great, but I think Batman Forever's Gotham is even greater. And James mentioned it last when we were doing the Batman stream last week, and he was like, Tommy Lee Jones, he really goes for it with his Two-Face, and I it's a vibe. I really
want that pink zebra.
Yes,
dude.
Yes, I was a fan. I was also a huge fan of his men having like glowing red, like neon, like on their weapons and stuff.
That was actually pretty cool.
There's a lot of like really cool stuff in here. I even like Jim Carrey in this, which I wasn't expecting, but
it's like you take a normal Jim Carrey. Somehow it's like dialed up to 11 for Jim Carrey. Even it's so ridiculous.
It really is, but it works. And like honestly, he kind of works as the Riddler. Like Tommy Lee Jones isn't really like Two-Face. He's just like a goofy, cartoony kind of villain, but it's really fun. And it works for the movie. But like even though Jim Carrey is like super over the top in this, like he kind of works as Riddler at the same time. But yeah, I thought it was really fun. There's a lot of cool stuff in it, a lot of cool sets. And I actually really liked Val Kilmer as Batman. And I think that it was a drastic improvement on the Bruce Wayne side of things.
Yeah,
because he's actually a character here. But yeah, I thought it was super fun. So I'm stoked to watch Batman and Robin next. And then I also watched Bridesmaids for the first time, which was really funny.
It's so funny, dude.
Yeah.
I love
I was traumatized by the food poisoning scene though. That was rough and vile. But yeah, I thought it was a really funny movie. Really heartwarming at times too. And also really sad at the same time. So it was like really solid for rom-com. I was a fan. And And then I watched Labyrinth for the first time, which
Haven't seen.
that's awesome. And I mean, it's no secret that I'm a Jim Henson fan. I love the Muppets. So I was already expecting to like this, but I think it's pretty awesome. The sets are unreal, and so many of the creature designs are really cool. There's the Bog of Eternal Stench, which is like the nastiest thing I've ever seen. It's really funny.
Are there any ROUSs in there?
What?
Rodents of unusual size.
Come on. Come on. Wow.
Yes,
We'll be covering it eventually.
We better. Apparently, we need to.
But yeah, I was a huge fan. And David Bowie was actually like really entertaining in it too. So let Robert Eggers cook. I'm really interested to see what he's doing with his sequel, I guess. So that'll be fun.
So it's a sequel?
Yeah, that's what they're saying.
That's what the word on the street is.
Yeah.
Word on the street.
And it's rumored that Alexander Skarsgård is going to play David Bowie's role. So,
well, of course, because he has to be in all these movies.
Yeah. But yeah, let's jump into Vertigo. So I guess I think that we should just kind of start with I guess just our like initial thoughts. So I guess I'll go ahead and start. I watched this film back in like 2020, I think. And I really liked it. I loved a lot about it, but it didn't click with me as much as other Hitchcock films did. Because I had also watched like Rear Window and Psycho and The Birds. And those were like kind of more my speed. But I kind of just went in open-minded again on this rewatch, and tried not to let like my preconceived like thoughts really affect my viewing. And I'm really glad I did, because I freaking loved this. I think that it may become my favorite Hitchcock film. I don't know if I'm quite there, able to say it yet, because I also like really, really love Rear Window. But I think this is fantastic. I think it's one of, if not his best looking film. So many incredible shots in this film. And then also might have my favorite Hitchcock score now, which we'll talk about. And then the performances are phenomenal. Jimmy Stewart is incredible in this, which, I mean, he's always given his A game, but this one in particular, I think, is just on the upper echelon of his best in his career. And then Kim Novak was amazing too. The way that she like swaps between essentially like three different characters, I think is just fantastic. And like, she just does it fluently. I'm like, how? But yeah, I'm a huge fan. I'm going to save like some of my other thoughts for later as we go throughout the discussion. But yeah, this one's awesome.
I'll just,
Michael, yeah,
I'll go real quick. So this was my first time to see this movie, and I had always heard, this movie's usually talked about in the, as far as like best movies of all time, it's always up there, usually with Citizen Kane and all that. But I know that I've heard the name for a long time. Finally starting to watch some Hitchcock movies this year outside of Psycho, and I'm loving the experience so far. But I was really excited to get to this one finally. And I gotta say, excuse me, I sound terrible. I'm so sorry. I texted the guys before I started the movie. I was like, okay, I haven't even made it past the menu, and I'm already like obsessed with the score. So like I figured I would be in for quite a ride just because the score, just for the Blu-ray menu, Blu-ray guys, it was amazing. It's like the perfect mystery score, and I wasn't wrong. I knew I figured I was gonna love it, but man, we get into it, and I'm like super into it for the first half of it, and then I don't know if we're talking spoilers just yet, but something happens at basically the midway point of the movie, and I was like, oh my gosh, where did they go after this? And we'll get into that more later. And when they did, I was just like, oh man, this has gone into a totally different direction. And honestly, it was a much more uncomfortable direction. Much more uncomfortable. And then by the end of the movie, actually the ending happened, and I was like, what? And I could not believe what I just watched, and that was the end. And to this point, it's so funny. I need a second viewing to like give it a score. I have 2 movies in a row. At the end of my first viewing, I'm like, I don't know how to rate this. I mean, other than, I'll tell you this, I love this movie. Okay, like I love this movie, but like, there's that last half of the movie really like there's a lot there, and it's uncomfortable. It is not common, and I think that's one of the best qualities of this movie, is that there are multiple points in the movies where any other director back in that time would have done this or that instead. And he goes like, what's the most uncomfortable thing I could do here? and he does that instead. And all the while, the cinematography, the colors, the score, the opening credits, even opening credits are so freaking cool. I can't remember the guy's name that does them, but he actually did several other of Hitchcock's films.
It's bad. I'm gonna look it up.
Yeah, it's the same guy who did several of his films, and I believe including Psycho. But he is, I mean, I love, like,
Saul Bass.
That's the name right there. And I was listening to him talk about it a little bit, and he was basically like, I firmly believe that the movie starts from frame 1, not like the opening credits are part of that.
Yeah.
And I love that train of thought. Rather than it just being like, oh, good, I got time to go to the bathroom real quick or whatever. Like, yeah. So
we can talk right now, right? We can just goof off and laugh and be like, hey, after this, does anybody want to go? And like, no, the movie started.
No, from note 1 of the score, from frame 1 of the movie, we are in, and it fits with the film, and it's really intriguing. Like, the eyes and the spirals, and it was so cool. Along with Bernard Herrmann's score. We'll talk more later. We'll talk more later about everything. But I love this movie. I'm really excited to process it with you guys, because that always helps me kind of land on where I'm at. So, yeah, James, I can't wait to hear your thoughts.
Well, before we went live, we're live. You had mentioned that you were. We'll do it live.
Every week, dude.
Also, I was gonna say, dude, there's a 0% chance that your background was not inspired by this film.
No, I know. That's why I was like,
yeah.
okay, well, I might as well go Lynch.
Yeah, Ernie's. There's no way Ernie's wasn't like just the way it was shot here. I know apparently it's a real restaurant. Oh, sorry. So, it was a real restaurant, and there's no way that Lynch was not inspired by the way he shot Ernie's.
I fully agree. Yeah, I totally agree. There's several scenes in this where I was like, that's so Twin Peaks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But before we started going live, you had mentioned that you had seen Dan Murrell's video on it, and
yeah,
that like it's not exactly it's not getting opinions from other people, but that there's something like really hearing other people's perspective helps you figure out your own. And so I'm also really looking forward to this conversation because I'm like, man, just sitting down, being in my own head for like a day now. I'm like, I love this, but I'm also like, I can't wait to like have facets of the movie open up through conversation.
Yeah.
But yeah, so this was also my first time. And I grew up rewatching Rear Window. I think we probably said that on that episode, but that was a huge family favorite. The other one that I watched a couple times growing up in my teens was Psycho. And then a few years ago, I started watching more. I watched The Birds and The Lady Vanishes and Shadow of It. Like, started trying to go through more of them. And I'm like, man, this is such a great filmography. And somehow just had not reached Vertigo yet. So I'm like, I'm so excited to get here. I know it famously unseated Citizen Kane on the Sight and Sound list. And it's like Scorsese's favorite movie ever. And so I'm like, oh, this is like
made for you.
Well, I'm just like, there's no way that I'm not like in for something, you know? And I was talking to somebody a couple of years ago and she was like, I don't think it's his best. And I was like, oh, interesting. Like why? She's like, well, it's too weird. It's his weirdest. And I'm like, man, I'm not going to lie. That has me excited because Hitchcock, and I don't think it's a fault. A lot of people might say approachable as a kind of condescending term, which I don't like. Hitchcock has tended to be an approachable director where like you throw on Psycho or Rear Window and cinephile and normie alike are going to be like, this is it. This is awesome.
Yeah.
And so I'm just like, because I know him in my mind as just like this, he even said it before, like he makes movies for an audience. He wants an audience to love it. And so just to hear that like there's this movie that's kind of borders on the weird in his filmography had me really excited. So I went into it being like, let's see what we're going to get. And yeah, from the opening credit sequence, I was like, the score immediately stands out. And like the close up on the eyes and the lips and the spirals and like the vertigo bright red in the pupil, I'm like, okay, like we're really cooking. We've got that great kind of cold open with the rooftop chase. We see the invention of the vertigo effect in film, which is just such a cool piece of film history to watch. And so it's all like I'm enjoying it. Jimmy Stewart is an immediate net positive. His presence makes everything better. So I'm like, okay, this is good. I think I fell in love with the movie during the first tailing sequence. When we go like 15 minutes with no dialogue, we're just driving around following her. I literally, I had to like, I noticed it because I was uncomfortable and I moved back. I was on the edge of my seat. There was just something about like my intrigue was so through the roof because I didn't know what this was about. And so when he starts talking about, I think she's like possessed by the ghost of someone. I'm like, weird. What's going on here? And then like just the like whenever she pulls down the alley and buys the actually before that, whenever he first sees her at Ernie's and you get that incredible red room, and there's a little moment whenever he starts to try to look, but then he looks away and she looks away, and the movie's like cross-cutting between them looking apart from each other. I'm like, oh, Hitchcock, you're so good. But then like the scene of her buying the flowers, you got the image of him peeking through the door and her in the reflection of the room he's in. I'm like, oh my gosh, he's always direct. Like he's always on. This is so cool. But then like whenever I felt like truly involved in the intrigue was when she's walking through the cemetery, and you see that she's visiting the grave there, and then whenever she sits down and just stares at the painting, and then you realize she's got her hair just like the lady there, and I'm like, this is kind of spooky. Like this is very, I don't know, a little bit unnerving. And he goes to the place that she stays at, and she's like, she hasn't been here. I would have known that she checked into her room. And of course, this whole tailing sequence, we've got this like the most like built for intrigue score playing over like him driving his car. And so yeah, that whole tailing sequence to me is like I fell in love with just the style. And I think one of the reasons why this is either going to be my favorite Hitchcock movie or one of, at the very least, like, I don't know, maybe like number 2 or 3, or, I don't know. Right now it feels like maybe a favorite, is I love mood. I just love the ability, like when you talk about mood, it's like, music can set a mood, cinematography can set a mood, all this and that. But like, what if the music is setting one mood and the cinematography is setting another? And it's like, I feel like if I were a director, that would send me into a panic attack, is like the idea of like trying to create a singular mood that can only be achieved by everything working together. And for me, with this movie, the slow kind of dialogue, the sense of kind of intrigue and longing, and like the voyeurism of like, we're watching so much of this from afar, and the music and all of it kind of being so like sunset and colorful and whatnot. It's just everything worked together to just create this like pervasive mood that was just sustained. And I was like, the plot is really great and intriguing, but I just cannot get over how he just created this atmosphere and this sense, and just like had me in like a vice grip with it for like 2 hours. So yeah, I was pretty floored. It was one of those movies like where it ended and I was like, oh wow, like that is a movie you talk about, like it ended and I sent y'all a voice message just being like, I cannot wait to talk about this movie with y'all. I'm so excited. So yeah, I was floored. I loved this movie.
Yeah, you mentioned something about Hitchcock that kind of made me think of something. So like when I was watching this, I don't mean this as like a bad thing at all, but like when you think of Hitchcock, you think of like, I mean, don't get me wrong, he'll have twists and turns. He'll do things out of the norm, but like he usually makes more like conventional thrillers. Like they're a little bit more straightforward than, what we get with Vertigo, which Vertigo is very different. It's like a little bit more abstract. It's weird. It is like just the one film that sticks out from the rest of his filmography. And the whole time I was watching it, I was just like, this is wild, because the film opens up like any other Hitchcock film. Like you think that you're in for just like a regular old like awesome Hitchcock thriller. When I had to shout this out real quick because the shot is so freaking cool. But I love that like the first shot, like post opening credits, is the close up of the ladder, and it starts pulling out, and then you see the hand grab the ladder, and then they have like the whole chase scene on the rooftops. And I like how like at first it almost seems like it's from the perspective of the guy running away, and that you think that like, oh, maybe he's the main character for a minute. But then it like changes the perspective to Jimmy Stewart. And I just think that whole opening sequence is awesome. The tension it builds, and then like getting introduced to this event that causes Jimmy Stewart's like fear of heights. I'm gonna keep calling him Jimmy Stewart instead of the character name because I just can't not. But
well, he's got a few names too, so
Yeah.
he does, yeah.
just like everyone in this movie.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I love that, like,
It's always been Midge.
the film sets the tone with the opening sequence with the score. But I love that opening sequence of the chase on the rooftops. It's really dark, like seeing the other officer fall to his death is just super morbid. And I think like something that I found really like fascinating is that vertigo and like the fear of heights and stuff like that can be caused by like traumatic events or seeing something traumatic happen, which is what happens with his character, and that's what like creates that fear in him, because it's not like something that he had before. They like mentioned that shortly in the film. And I just found that really fascinating because I also like have vertigo, and it's from heights. And so I was just like, oh, I know this stuff because like I experienced it myself. So I just like really connected with it in that way. But then, you get past that first scene and it's daylight, and it stays daylight for like a good chunk of the film. And you have like this explosive, super fast, intense opening, and then it's slow. And it just has this very slow build throughout the film. Like, I don't know. It's just the whole time I was watching it, I was like, man, this does not like, it feels like a Hitchcock film, but it also doesn't at the same time, because this is so different than anything else that I've seen of his. But I'm with you, James. I love the mood that and the tone that he sets. Like every single like car sequence, like just all of the slow moments where Jimmy Stewart is following her, I am like fully in and just along for the ride. And I think like also another point I wanted to make real quick before I forget, I think like another thing that's really interesting about this film is I put in my notes like there's almost like a distance to the film, but like I haven't really been able to like put my finger on it, because it's not an emotional distance. It's not it's not a cold film. Like there's a lot of vibrant colors. There's a lot of charismatic characters. Like even Jimmy Stewart is very charismatic in this film. But like it really does, like, I think of David Lynch when I watch this, because it really does feel like a Lynchian, like surreal kind of vibe, because the whole time it almost feels like a dream. It's like you're there, you can see everything, you can almost feel everything, but if you get too close, then it's like you wake up and you realize like, oh, I'm in a dream, like this isn't actually happening. And I think there's like several points throughout the film that it's filmed in such a way where it like leans heavily into that. I remember there's this part where he's following her. I think it's like a little later on in the film. It's not the first time he's following her in the car, but they're driving down hills, and it's almost like they're going in circles. It's like a spiral in the way that they're driving. And I was just like, is this like actually happening right now? Or like what, like I don't know. It's just got such a weird vibe, but I love it.
Yeah. I I listened to the William Friedkin commentary over this, and he kind of touched on, I think, part of what creates that sensation of feeling not like an emotional detachment from it, but what just makes it feel like it's just there's there's something you can't quite reach out and grab the movie. And he said it's because like Hitchcock shot this film as a voyeur. Like he is watching something else from afar. And the thing he's watching is emotionally intense and everything, but he's not there with them. He's like and then Friedkin points out, he's like kind of with the audience. It's like we're just kind of hiding, like peeking behind bushes watching this. Like there's just a sense of like we're intruding on a thing. Like we are like Jimmy Stewart, who is and I think that's where it comes from. Is so much of this movie is spent literally just watching the seemingly mundane from afar. You know, obviously it turns out there's really weird stuff that she's doing, but we really do just spend so much of our time trying not to be seen and just staring at people go about doing things. And then just about the dreaminess, there was in the interview he did with Truffaut, he was asking him about like the dreamlike quality, and he was like, well, you know, like we did different things to try to achieve that. And so in that graveyard scene when he's following her and you got all the vibrant flowers, but there's a kind of strange sense to it. Is like we shot that through a fog lens. Like we had a fog lens over the camera so that it would feel misty. Like it's things are there but might kind of dissipate if you try to reach out and grab it. So there is this kind of daydreamy haze that was like literally used in camera to just kind of make everything feel, I don't know, really dreamy. But yeah, and I think Jimmy Stewart is incredible, but I think Kim Novak's performance goes so long, like such a far way in creating the mood of the film. Like when he's got her at the apartment after she jumps in the bay and she's just sitting by the fire, and like it's kind of pleasant small talk, but you're like, boy, there's something here. There's something she's not letting on. We just like her past is loaded with intrigue. You just get the sense. Just even like the way she walks, like just the way she walks into a room and turns her head, anything. It feels like everything about this performance is fine tuned to like make you want to lean in and be like, what? Who is this person? You know, like what is this person's deal? So it's just everything about the movie is just kind of drawing you in, trying to get you to kind of look closer at what's happening.
Yeah. I was just enchanted by the first bit of the movie. Like it does feel like a dream, but it's also like it was a pleasant dream at the first, at least like the first half of it. Like for sure. Like I really think the further it goes into it, the more uncomfortable I was, and not in a bad way. Like like the things that start to happen are like, oh goodness, stop. But I don't know. There was at the same time. I know what you mean, Drew. Sorry, you guys. I'm so sorry. I sound so bad. My nose is completely stuffed up.
Dude,
I'm about the same, anyways. So,
but I feel the same way about. There's like a certain distance, but this is a really. There's a lot of warmth to this movie. I don't feel like there's not a coldness at all. It is definitely like I want to be there with Jimmy Stewart's character. I want to be there with Midge. By the way, I want someone to be there with Midge. She deserves love.
I fell in love with Midge.
I love her so much. She was a wonderful character. And their conversations just made me happy. I mean, there's something about like I don't know, just the way that like they clearly had a history, but like she's just a really good friend. And
Those were like the Hitchcockian conversations that I love. Like the Rear Window is full of that kind of stuff between him and Grace Kelly. And
what's hilarious is the movie started and he's in a wheelchair, and I was like, "Is this Rear Window too?"
He's even like, "I can't wait to get out of this thing so I can scratch." And I'm like, "Wait, what?
Wait, didn't I watch this already?" Yeah,
that was intentional, 100%. It was deliberate.
It was deliberate. It was very funny. I also just love Hitchcock movies in color. I've never seen one before. This was my first one. I don't know how many there are. Color. Wait, what? You're right. Sorry. In my mind, it was totally not color, but you're right. No, it was. But I do. I love his movies in color. They're so like vibrant, and that was one of the other things that draws me into the movie. It's so vibrant, and there's so much life to it. The grass, and the greens, and all the colors of the cars. Did y'all think it was funny that like how closely he followed her in the car? Did y'all notice? Like, for me, if I'm following someone in a car, I want to be a little bit conspicuous about it or inconspicuous about it. I felt like he was like driving right behind her the whole time, and I was like,
"Yeah,
there's something weird going on here because someone should have she should have noticed this," you know. But that should have been maybe a clue into what happens later. That I don't know, but I don't know. That was just a little thought that I had. I thought it was funny. Like he wasn't making any effort to be sneaky about it. At least not like people would now.
I think so. This could just be me like using my own headcanon or whatever. But to me, like I think that's almost intentional because he was very like hesitant on even taking the job, and he was like very clear, like I'm retired, and he also thought like this just doesn't sound legit, you know. Like someone getting possessed, like no, like you're silly. So like I think that was almost intentional in the way of like he was kind of being a little bit careless, and I even felt that way whenever he was at the art exhibit,
and he starts
like,
talking to that guy like just in normal voice.
Yeah, he's just like he's not like trying to really hide himself as well as he should be. And then also her, like we'll get there when we do, but like I think that she probably was aware, but you know, that whole
that
thing.
was what I was that's kind of what I was saying. I feel like it was almost like that should have been a clue that maybe this isn't legit.
Yeah. And I will say, like, I really like now. This is why, like, I love talking that we're talking about this movie because it's like I wouldn't have really thought about that until you had mentioned it. But then I'm like, oh yeah, that actually, no, it feels intentional. But I love that there are like bits and pieces that kind of like give you hints, but like you just don't really know what to think of it. Like when James was talking about when he is like trying to look for her room or to like see if she's in her room, and then the lady at the desk is like, she's like, no, she hasn't walked in here, like I don't know what you're talking about, and then like her car's missing. Like I feel like that was also like there's bits and pieces that are like kind of like foreshadowed or like give you like hints, but like you really don't know what it means until you get there, which I think is pretty brilliant.
It's definitely one where like I'm already really excited to like get back to a rewatch and to be like, how much of this really really was kind of there. Do we want to get to can we spoil the
Yeah.
the midpoint?
Let's go for it.
Because I'm interested in how this initially settled for y'all, because I'll just say initially I had a negative-ish reaction, and then it way won me over. But there was a way they did it that even after it finished, I was like, I don't know how I feel about that. But then there was something that Friedkin said in the commentary that made me go, oh my gosh, no, that's great. But so, it kind of feels like it's being shot like a climax in a film where she's reached the place that she sees in her dream. You find out Carlotta committed suicide when she was 26. Madeline is 26. There's this impending doom that just hangs over the first half of this film. Like, we know, like, my heart sank when it showed the bell tower. I was like, there's something dreadful about to happen. And, climbing up there, and then just the scream as we saw the body drop. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, like I gasped. And then the movie continues on, and I'm like, I have no idea what this movie is supposed to be now. And he finds this other woman who looks like Maddie, and he's following her around. He starts to talk with her. And then we get this moment where she stares right at the camera. Like, it almost feels like a confession from her, where she reveals to the audience by means of like her own flashback that this was all a hoax. It was a trick to get him to confirm the insanity of his friend's wife, so that his friend could kill his wife and run off with this other girl, and nobody be the wiser. And initially I was like, man, I was so in on the Carlotta ghost stuff happening. I was like, this is so intriguing. And Hitchcock has never truly dealt with like anything paranormal. And I was really into that. It ends up replacing it with this uncomfortable spiral into madness with Jimmy Stewart. And the commitment to that aspect of it was like oh, never mind. Okay, I'm on your side, movie. This is incredible. But the element that I was unsure of was her confession to the audience, because I was like, I kind of wish that we found out with Jimmy Stewart. Because it's like there's no real contextual reason for her to confess to the audience. We've got her writing the letter that she rips up, but something that Friedkin said that I was like, oh, that's actually great, is and then Hitchcock mentions it as well in an interview where he's like, if there's a scene where there's two characters at a table and there's a bomb under the table, if you don't know there's a bomb under the table until the very end, then everything before that is wasted potential for suspense. He's like, he's like, my favorite thing is dramatic irony, is to let the audience in on a secret before the character is, so that you spend the whole time being like, what is, like, now that we know, but our protagonist doesn't know, every scene is full of what is he going to do if he finds out? This man is like obsessive and loony right at this point. Like, what is he going to do when he finds out that this was all like a ruse? And if that's not revealed at that point, then we spend all of that just kind of only experiencing the uncomfort for her, who we might still think is just a person who looks like her. And it's just, oh man, I really feel bad for her. But there's a whole, by letting us in on the secret, there's a whole level of like, oh, what are we building towards? What is going to, like, this movie's going to explode when he finds out what happened. And she's not just this, oh, poor girl, wrong place, wrong time. She looks like her, but it's like, she's in her own messed up place of like, I'm in a tight spot, but I also kind of love him, but I'm also like, it's just like she's kind of almost reaping what she sowed through the ruse. So there's just the second half of this movie would have just been experienced so differently if he didn't let the audience in on the secret. And that explanation really won me over, because I'm like, I actually do think the second half is a lot more interesting, just biting my nails waiting for the other shoe to drop with his character, than it would have been of just being like, oh, this poor girl for half a movie.
Yeah. I was gonna say, so first off, I did not know that's where that Hitchcock quote came from, because I've heard that quote a billion times. I didn't realize it was for this film. But yeah, like I kind of had like the same initial reaction. I was like, why are we getting this like so early on? But I like that, you know, we're revealed that, but I still was like, what is, like, still get this like feeling of like what's gonna happen, you know? Because like whenever he's you know, driving her out to the tower, I'm like, he's about to kill her. he is so far gone. He is so obsessive. Like
that, real quick.
Yeah.
What the quote? One final thing I have to do, and then I'll be free of the past. On their way out to the, oh my gosh, dude!
When he gets out of the car, she's like, "Where are we?" And he's like, "This is where Madeline died." And he's like, "I'm gonna stay in the car." He's like, "No, I need you to be Madeline." I'm like, oh!
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
sorry. Go ahead. It is.
Yeah. I was just gonna say, like, I think it's genius that Hitchcock revealed that to us early on, because this whole film, like, you're thrown, like, Hitchcock is throwing a wrench in it every step of the way, because once you think you like start understanding what's happening, it's like, nope, I revealed stuff to you, but no, you still don't get it. You still don't know what's gonna happen. And I love that about it, because that to me, like, the good mysteries are the ones where even when you find out the details, even when you feel like you're a step ahead of the main character, you're not.
Yeah, I'm so glad we're talking about this, because I had the same thought. It was one of the only things in the movie I was like, is this a problem that I actually have with the movie? Because I feel like finding out with Jimmy Stewart's character would have been the obvious, objectively better choice. Like when you first think about it, like, that was a weird choice. But like some of my favorite mystery stuff, like Columbo, or like Knives Out, or like Poker Face, which you need to watch, they give away the murder and who did it right at the beginning. Like, you know, the audience member, you know what happens. The fun and the tension is watching the people figure it out, right? It's watching that happen. And so like it's just a different kind of tension that you get. And sometimes I love that quote, because that makes a ton of sense, because yeah, like it actually would have been a much less tension filled second half of the movie. And the tension is like so integral to that part of the movie. I don't know what it would have. I didn't think about it at first, being like, well, if we would have found out about it when Jimmy Stewart did, I didn't put it together that, oh yeah, there wouldn't have been any tension that way, or there wouldn't have been as much tension. So like, really, like, hearing him say that, and thinking about some of the other mysteries that I love, where I know what happens before the main characters do, I think I'm pretty cool with it. In fact, I think I'm pretty pro it. Like, yeah. Like, I think it was a good decision. And I love that, like, I love when someone does something like that and then they have an amazing explanation for why they did it. Yeah. Like, they didn't just do it because, oh, well, let's just exposition that. Yeah. Like, there's there is an artistic reason for that choice, and I think it makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, because at first my initial worry was like, they just think audiences were going to be too dumb and like unwilling to go further. We're like, all right,
Right.
I'm not going to sit through an hour more of this, not knowing who, like what's going on. So Hitchcock's like, fine, I'll tell him at this point. And so it was, at first I was just wanting to hear, like, at least say it was artistic. I don't know if this is like exactly the way I would have done it. I mean, I walked out of the movie head over heels in love with it, but I was like, I still don't know if this was the thing. And then hearing that the bomb under the table quote of like, think about the way that scene would play out if you just think it's two characters. You can write intense dialogue and all that. It's like, but imagine if halfway through a character pulls up, like while the other character's gone, like the skirt at the table, and you realize there's a bomb, and then the rest, like the second half carries on, and you're like, ooh, that's obviously like, that's Chekhov's gun that's coming back. And I kind of had the same experience as you, Michael, where I thought backwards to like, okay, could I imagine this movie, like the theoretical version of this movie where that didn't happen? Does the tension remain in those scenes?
Yeah.
And I don't think it does, at least to the same extent, because it, like, when the audience, like, it became so clear that the movie intentionally gave us a piece of information that it withheld from the protagonist. And more often than not, it feels like when that's done, like, we know that protagonist is going to get that information at some point.
Right.
And so by setting that up halfway through, every scene has the potential to be that scene. Every scene has the potential to be the scene where the other shoe drops. And so when he sees the necklace, you just kind of have oh, there it is. There, yep. The cat's out of the bag.
It is almost like, because we knew about it already, when he sees the necklace, it actually does feel like a little more satisfying at that moment, because like, the moment we've been waiting for has happened. And actually, I think it does. I think it works better. And I think it's pretty genius, actually.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's, I'm really glad that, like, because I didn't hear Hitchcock talk about that. I just knew my first initial, I don't know what I think about this, but like hearing that explanation, I think it makes a ton of sense, and I actually really love it now. So thank you, Hitchcock.
Yeah, thanks for being the director and writer you were.
Yeah.
Yes, seriously.
There's a couple of quotes, or not quotes, comments in the YouTube feed now. We want to read some of those, both from Slasher Fred. Thanks for joining in and commenting, by the way.
Yeah.
I remember Slasher, was it last week or the week before? I can't remember, but I remember Slasher Fred was chatting with us recently. So it's good to see you back.
Maybe? Yeah, definitely good to see you.
But he said, what makes Vertigo a very classic movie is that it is all about obsession. You have Jimmy Stewart, who's obsessed with Kim Novak's character. Yeah, the movie is just dripping with that sense of like tight gripping something. It's just like you cannot let go of this thing. And the uncomfortable level we get to in the second half is, I'm like, no, Jimmy, it's so weird to see you like this.
Yeah.
And then he said, if you guys ever watched the classic Hitchcock movie Strangers on a Train, the female character who is played by his daughter Pat is a dead ringer for the Guy Haynes B wife that is murdered. I have not seen it. That's one I really want to watch.
Doesn't he mean Snakes on a Plane?
Oh no,
Samuel L. Jackson is in that.
Oh man,
yeah, the classic Hitchcock movie.
Sorry, man.
Dude, could you imagine what he could do with that premise?
Oh, it would be much better.
I'm not gonna lie, he took the premise of a bunch of killer birds and turned it into a movie that like floored me. So
he took the premise of a Peepin' Tom.
Yeah, and made a masterpiece.
Yeah, literally made a masterpiece from it.
Oh man,
I do want to. I want to kind of keep going with this obsession topic. I have probably brought this up on an episode before. But there's a couple of things that the second half of this movie kind of made me think about. There is an episode of Fringe. If you play a drinking game where Michael talks about Fringe and you take a drink, you can take your drink now. But there's an episode of Fringe where this guy, where the monster of the week or whatever, the murder of the week or whatever, it ends up being this guy who, and I'm not going to do too many spoilers here, but it's basically this guy who is piecing together, who is piecing together, using different people's parts, trying to reanimate a person who he misses, and it never, and he accomplishes it or whatever, and he looks into her eyes, and it's not the same person, and then there's also an episode of What If, that's Doctor Strange centric, and to me it's like the masterpiece episode of What If, because I don't love the show, but that episode in particular, but it's basically like Doctor Strange trying to take control. He basically is in a time loop where he loses what's her name, the girl he loves. I cannot remember her name. He loses her in a car wreck, and but he's caught in like a time loop, and no matter how many times he goes about it, he tries to change it to save her life. And every time he does it, it messes up a little more and a little more. And by the end of it, he saves her, but by the end of it, he has become a monster. He himself has become like a monster, like unrecognizable to her. And she sees him and is like terrified of him. And it made me think of this because the last half of this movie, the way that he tries to basically recreate
Madeline
is really, really creepy. It's really uncomfortable, but it's just where he the psychological state that he is in, and there's something really, really interesting and intriguing to me about someone like that trying to recreate this, even there's a discomfort there, but at the same time, I can't stop watching this. This is really intriguing, but I'm very, very uncomfortable with what is happening right now. And I just wanted to see what y'all thought about the whole process of him, kind of trying to turn this girl into the girl he loves. Obviously, at that point, he doesn't know who she is. He doesn't know what we know, but it is really, really I did not see the movie going there, and it made me it was one of those weird things where you're watching a movie and you feel this isn't fun. I don't feel comfortable with this, but it's also extreme. That's the psychological place of where his character was at after having his own trauma from the very beginning of the movie, on top of seeing the girl he loves fall from the top of a building, allegedly. He was just in this place, and it's it almost seemed healing at times for him, which made it even way worse. And so I just want to get y'all's thoughts on kind of that whole side of the story, because it was one of the more interesting parts of the movie, but it was also, for me, one of the most really, really uncomfortable parts as well.
Yeah. I think, well, first off, I think this just goes to show that even back in the early days of cinema, like we were already getting incredible films about obsession, and like today we still get incredible films about obsession. Like there's just something. Yeah, exactly. Whiplash, Uncut Gems. There's something super fascinating about watching these characters obsessed with something and just seeing them like completely derail mentally or emotionally or like whatever, right? So I think it's really fascinating, and I think like actually something that like helps this film a lot is that you have a main character that like that's like really likable. Like Jimmy Stewart's character is super likable, and when he gets to this point of obsession in the second half of the film, it's like, oh, like you said, it was almost kind of like healing for him, which like is bad, but at the same time, like you feel sympathetic towards him because it's like he's clearly like psychologically and mentally is not all there right now, and this is the one thing that like maybe will like help fix that, but like also it's like really creepy at the same time. So it's just like you feel super conflicted like watching all of this unravel. But I think it's just, it adds just another layer to the film that like I really love about it. Like because it's one thing if he was like obsessed with the case, but like having him be obsessed with the person that he was like trailing, I think like that just adds a whole nother layer to it. And like also whenever, and also like I will say there's also the flip side of it of like, yeah, what he's doing is creepy, but like at the same time, like this is the woman that he actually fell in love with.
Right.
And so like part of her probably kind of wants to go along in a way because it's like, well, he fell in love with me. So it's like, and she loves him too. So it's just like, I don't know, man. It really like that in and of itself gives you vertigo, right? Because it's just like,
how do I feel?
yeah, it's like I don't know how I should be feeling about this because like it's weird and it's creepy, but at the same time it's kind of not when you look at it at one way. Like I don't know, I think it's fascinating.
I think it has, from what I've seen, the most complex range of emotions in a Hitchcock film. Where I even felt like there was a big mixture of emotions I felt with Jimmy Stewart's character himself, where on one hand, I know we've said this, I don't know that another actor has like the same amount of inherent likability as Jimmy Stewart is. Like if we were all made using a character creator, like his likability scale, like from birth, was just maxed out. Like he walks into a room and you're like, can we please be best friends? But like even before everything, there is, I mean, to fall in love and want to run away with your best friend's wife is pretty sketch, you know?
Yeah.
And I will say that first kiss they shared is one of the most cinematic kisses.
Dude, the waves crashing in the background and the score.
I wanted to like transcend.
But it was, I agree. However, I felt uncomfortable there.
I did too, where like it was like a dude, your buddy's like desperately scared for his wife. He thinks she's gonna kill herself, and you're like making out with her now.
Yeah.
And so even before the fall, you're like, this guy, and then the way he reacted to Midge's painting made me so sad for her. I love her. And like I can't fault a man for falling in love with Kim Novak. In that scene, whenever like they're at the fireplace, they're at the fireplace, And he's like, have you ever fallen into the bay before? And she's like, no, I've fallen into rivers and creeks. And have you? And he's like, oh no, I have. Like, just that the banter there. You're like,
Yeah.
boy, it would like I would have to like step away from that situation. And it found out apparently Kim Novak worked with Hitchcock for a while, just trying to like. She said it was liberating. She's like, I had both a huge amount of freedom with the role, but at the same time there were things that had to be exact, and some of those things were like these scenes where she's kind of meant to be like this kind of, I don't know, like the quintessential kind of woman that you fall in love with from afar, like who's beautiful and intriguing and mysterious, and you're just like, what is this beautiful enigma in front of me? And they were like, there were just things that they had to get exact about her performance that just made you be like, bro, I get it. But even still, you're still throughout like whenever, they've had enough time to like, after that kiss, to where it's like, all right, you can no longer claim a moment of passion. This is now choices being made. And she's like, we can't, I'm married, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, it doesn't matter. We love each other. That's all that matters. It's like, how are you going to explain this one, man? And then they have, or no, they don't have their second kiss there. That's whenever, oh no, they kiss again, and then she runs into the bell tower, and all of that happens. But also, Drew, you brought up something that to me is a part of this movie that I also find like one of the most fascinating aspects of it, which is like, who is it that he fell in love with? Because I feel like so much of this movie is about like identity and like who we are and like roles we play and whatnot. Because when you think about it, like who is the woman he fell in love with? Because think about how many levels deep is like the persona that he found attractive, where it was one woman playing another woman, pretending to be possessed by another woman.
Yeah.
And so it's like, what is the person that he loves isn't real. It is a layer of deception. And so what is it that he's actually obsessing over? And something that I love about this movie is that because it's all about like duality and identity, and like mirroring is such a big part. Like the scene whenever they're like trying on the dresses, whenever she confronts him and she's like, you're trying to make me into her. They have that argument standing right next to like a mirrored wall. And so you just see them like right there juxtaposed against themselves. But it feels like the movie is a mirror of itself. And I think you feel that in the sense that it kind of feels like it's a new thing halfway through, but we hit familiar beats again, where everything is fake the first time and it becomes more real the second time. Where the first go around, there's madness, but it's faked madness. She's putting on, it's feigned madness. There's a ghost, but she's in on it. She's pretending. And then the halfway point happens, and her faked madness creates real madness for Jimmy Stewart in the second half. And like the fake ghost of Carlotta basically becomes the ghost of Madeline for him. And like the whole second half, Madeline's dead. But you feel like the presence of Madeline is like this ghost he can't get out of his head. He sees her everywhere. So it's like we're hitting the same thing of like craziness and a specter, and both ends with Kim Novak's death. Like Act 1 ends with the death of Madeline. Act 2 ends with the death of Judy. So it really is like the movie is like folded in, mirroring each other. It's just the second run through. Like, I mean, it's not an actual paranormal ghost, but like the first madness is fake. The second madness is real. The first ghost is fake. It's almost becomes this real ghost that he's possessed by. Like he cannot shake this kind of looming specter of Madeline. The first, like we end in Madeline's death the first time. We end in Judy's death this time. It's just, it feels like we run it back again, but it's so much darker the second time.
Dang. You know, you make good points sometimes. When we're not talking about Batman Returns. I really like that thought of the movie being like a mirror of like one side and then the other. That's really cool, dude. Like folding up into itself. That's awesome.
And it just feels like it feels intentional because there is such a clear point of separation.
Yeah.
And yet it still feels like we see beats pop up, you know, like she is obsessed with the ghost of Carlotta. She's obsessed about recreating. Her hair has to be just like Carlotta's, you know. She has to go to the places that Carlotta went. And then in the second half, you know, she comes back from the place and he's like, your hair's not the way it was. Your hair has to be that way.
Right.
They go to Ernie's. They go back to the places that Madeline went. And so it's just like, he is everything that she pretended to be in the first half.
So, okay, speaking about all of that, I have two questions. So, and they go hand in hand with each other. So, do you think that he ever actually like encountered with the real Madeline? Because in the film they mentioned that she was like mostly living in like the countryside, but they never really say they never really show or say if he ever like actually encountered the real Madeline. And then my second question is, if he never encountered her, then was the Madeline that he fell in love with, was that actually just Judy, or was she trying to be Madeline? Because if he was never going to actually meet the real Madeline, then why would she have to be anyone but herself?
Oh, I think that's a good question. I think maybe like a practical answer would be like, in the off chance that he were to ever see her, she'd want to at least get some level of like surface level impression down. But I do think the ambiguity to that adds to the question of like, what is it that he fell in love with? You know, like, did he fall in love with an impression of a person doing an impression of it? Like, what is it? You know?
Very good question. Because I actually had some similar thoughts while I was watching the movie, and I didn't really know the answer to it either. So that was one of the things. And then I also wondered too, what you guys thought of like the very very ending of the movie when she falls. Like, how did y'all feel with that being the end? I was left unsure of how to feel because I think there's like probably something I might be missing with the nun or something, but I was like, my first thought was, really? She died by like, it felt like she died by tripping because she got scared that there was a nun there and the nun had no role in the movie. And so I was like, did I miss something? And also, that's the most shocking ending ever. And so I just had some mixed emotions and feelings about the ending. So I was going to see what you guys thought of it because I still don't know what I think of the ending.
I definitely think it was shocking for sure. I was just my mouth dropped. But I think the impression that I got is that, you know, right before that moment happens, they're talking about the husband like getting away, and Jimmy Stewart's like, you know, oh, did he leave you behind? Like, were you really like not worth it to him, or like, you know, whatever he's saying.
Right.
that they're making an emphasis on that, and then she looks up and we see the nun, and at first it's just like, you know, a shadow,
Just a
like you can't.
silhouette.
Which,
Yeah,
by
it's
the
just a
way,
silhouette.
I got like I literally chills all the way up my
Yeah.
spine when
I
I just
would-
saw the
oh.
shadow.
Like I kind of like
Because I was like, "Oh, the ghost of the ghost is back." Nope, not
I got the impression that like she was probably scared that that he was coming back to kill her, to like not leave any loose ends. That's just the way that I took it, but I don't know.
I love the ending. I love I've learned I love abrupt endings, because usually abrupt endings, if they're earned, they're the kind that like when they cut to black or they say the end or whatever, it just makes you go, wow. Like if we have a gentle plane landing, we're like, ah, and like there's like a gentle sigh. But if it's just like boom, credits, I'm like, whoa, whoa. Like it's just like a sensory experience to me. If it's just a rug pull and then they're like, all right, now go home. Thematically, I love it, because I do, partly just because I love that both halves would be bookended with Kim Novak dying.
right. I love that as well.
And just again rethinking about it, the irony that hangs over everything whenever she is in love with him, and she knows that the only way that it's going to be reciprocated is if she tries to be Madeline for him. And at the time you think, well, that implication simply means, you know, dressing like her, talking like her, doing all that.
Yeah.
With the ending in mind, you're like, that means being Madeline to the very end. You know, little did you know that you are literally stepping into her shoes, and the same brown shoes that he was so meticulous to get. But like that there's just the retroactive irony of like, she had no idea what she meant whenever she was like, okay, I'll be Madeline for you. And it also like they have that scene when at the church grounds, whenever like he's kissing her and she keeps looking off at the church that she's got to go into. This is kind of hot off the heels of like their first kiss at the beach and stuff. And it just, I don't think he was practicing at that point, but he grew up, Alfred Hitchcock grew up Catholic and attending mass and everything. And it felt like there was some intention behind this illicit affair happening, like under the shadow of a steeple, you know?
And almost like the nun being up there was like, it was like a judgment.
Yeah,
thing,
there's
for your
something.
sins.
Yeah, like
The
there's just
nun
something
jump scare.
about. Do it.
I said the nun jump scare.
Exactly. Which was probably scarier than anything in the Nun movie.
Oh, that's true.
Which is all. But yeah, it to me it felt like there's just irony to that. This is where this is going down, and it was, and like there's so much like kind of under the text, like sexual stuff happening in this movie. Like there's a lot of like sexual tension throughout the whole movie, and so having this final moment happen due to somebody who has made like a vow of chastity, like it just, it feels like there's something happening there, that like there's some irony, and it's the kind of looming specter of a nun on the church ground that startled her to her death. But I don't know.
Also, like it, like to lean more heavily into that, it could be like, you know, not just like the affair that was happening, but also like the fact that she was an accomplice in a murder.
Right.
Like kind of just makes it like hit a little bit harder. That's a really good point.
Yeah. I think because I couldn't get past the fact that it was a nun. Like if it wasn't just like a janitor walked up there and she got scared from a janitor or something. It felt intentional that it was a nun, and that the nun was like kind of this foreboding character in the darkness at first, and then it was like suddenly there. It felt like that was intentional, but I was like, I don't know how satisfied I am with that, so I'm just gonna have to wrestle with it a little more, because ultimately those thematic, things you just mentioned, I think probably were intentional, but at the end of the day, it still feels like she just tripped and fell, and that was the end of the movie. And that also feels a little bit like, yes, abrupt, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it also feels like, really? Like, after all that? But part of me kind of loves it, because any other, like, well, honestly, like y'all said, like he's kind of conventional a lot of times. Maybe in any other of his movies, that kiss would have been the end of the movie. Like, they kiss again up there, right? And it was like he got past his trauma, he got past his thing, because he was able to climb up to the top, and so he was like, I made it. So like it almost was like they can reconcile up here, and then just when you think that might happen, nope, and that happens instead. So I kind of love that as well. But I'm just kind of like wrestling with how I feel about the ending in general. It's just a lot, and it's just so sudden, and it's not necessarily satisfying. But again, that's not necessarily bad. It's just,
I think it's supposed to not be satisfying, because also, if you think about it, the dude got away. He got away with the murder.
100%.
He never got caught.
Yeah.
He moved away. Where to? Who knows? And so
really quick, I did when I was listening to the Dan Murrell thing, as James said earlier, I apparently back then there was like a code you had to follow, and like for like morality and stuff, and they forced him to film a second ending where they explained that the guy got caught and didn't get away with it. Like, you couldn't film a movie, you couldn't make a movie where the guy got away with it scot-free.
Yeah.
And
so he catches up with him a half mile down the road and slits his throat.
It was great. But I just thought that was interesting, and apparently Hitchcock hated. He did not want to do that.
Yeah, that scene is included in the disc that I think you have, because your menu looked like the same menu as mine, so I think we have the same disc. Apparently, it's for international releases.
Okay.
And yeah, the forward to it is like, in no situation other than the one forced upon him would he have ever shot this.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's.
But yeah, that's a good point. It's like, yeah, the guy, I mean, there's no resolution there. He just got away with it perfectly well.
And it feels like, even like when Jimmy Stewart steps out on the ledge and he's looking down, like there's just utter confusion on his face too, where he's like,
"Yep,
what? This, this is how this ends."
Yeah.
And I also think just like great cinematic moments cover their own share of potential problems for me, and like chills ran down my spine with the nun reveal. And I was like,
me too, dude.
And
for real.
I personally bought, like, if I were up in that bell tower and I turned around and I saw the silhouette standing in that corner, I probably would have died. Like, I would have, not too exact. Like, I would have stepped back. She was already standing on the ledge. I don't feel like I have to suspend my disbelief to think that, like, that silhouette standing in the corner of a room, like, when you're already in such an emotionally fraught state with Jimmy Stewart's crazed hands around your shoulders, like it takes no real imagination for me to imagine like that she would see that and like be so startled that she'd try to step back. And
It almost does feel like her death was kind of inevitable in some way too. Like if they were to, you know, that kiss at the top, and then they go down and they like continue on with their relationship. Their past is so messy at this point. Like who knows which version of him, which version of her that he's in love with, and like he's a mess, and like it just. I mean, they fell in love under. He fell in love with who knows what version of her, while he, in his mind, she's married to his friend. There's just so many things like there's so many things that their relationship started.
Happy ending would have been unearned.
I agree. Yeah, a happy ending would have been unearned, and I don't necessarily want a happy ending here. I fully agree. A happy ending would have been really unearned here, and it would have felt actually wrong. It actually felt like them getting away with all that would feel really wrong as well. So I think her death happening makes a lot of sense. I just was I still don't know how I feel just about how it happened, but it was definitely a shocker. Like that WTF I sent in the chat, that was right then. It's like, what?
Bold. What a bold
it's very, very bold. I appreciate it.
Yeah. I was gonna say real quick, we got some more comments if we want to read some of those real quick.
It looks like we've got the two new ones, the most recent two new ones from Slasher Fred. If one of y'all want
to, yeah. So Fred mentioned the dream sequence is famous because he's thinking about the character of Madeline and he can't stop thinking about her. And then Fred also mentioned, if you guys ever see the underrated movie The Girl on the Train, it has a lot of similarities to Hitchcock's movies, including the scene from Vertigo where Madeline is in the museum.
Interesting.
I'll have to check that out. But yeah, real quick, I actually wanted to talk about the dream sequence. Because we haven't even talked about it yet. Dude, that insane. And like that's another moment where I was like, man, David Lynch. he was watching this for sure. But like
he said, wow.
He really did. I love it. Like I think that if the opening sequence or the opening credit sequence didn't happen in the film, that would have been like whiplash.
Yes.
It was so like far detached from everything else, even though there's the weird like dreamlike feeling throughout the whole movie. It would have been like really like out there. I would have still loved it, but it would have been out there. But I like that it ties back to the opening sequence of the film. But also just like I don't know what to say other than it's just so bizarre, and I love like just seeing Jimmy Stewart's head floating and turning different colors.
Weird 2001 vibes almost.
Yeah. It felt like very far ahead of its time.
Yeah.
And it also like doesn't look bad either. I love the animated, like the animation look at like the start and stuff. Like
when the roses became like a cartoon bouquet and started playing, I'm like, what are we watching?
It looks awesome. I was a massive fan of that. Yeah.
I don't remember a ton of images from it, except I just remember my feeling watching it, and I was just like, what is happening right now? But that shot of him waking up with those eyes like that was where I was like, oh my gosh, where are we going now? Also, by the way, too, talk about things that made my skin crawl when he like there's that shot where he's talking to what's the guy's name that framed the whole thing?
I can't remember his friend's name.
But he's talking to him at the church after the coroner talked. and he's it's like he's looking at their conversation and he sees the ghost of the girl.
Carlotta, yeah.
I got chills across my shoulders on that one too. It was really like every time they brought the ghost in, I did get like
it was a little bit more spooky than I expected.
It really was. I genuine chills multiple times in the movie. But then you got that animated sequence and him waking up with those eyes, and it's just like, wow, that was something.
Yeah. It was like almost startling.
Yeah.
Like it kind of jolted. You're like, what is this? Is this allowed in a movie like this? You know, like it's, and I don't know. Maybe some like I can like almost tend to err too much on the side of like be bold, whatever, blah blah blah. But like, boy, when you're bold and out there and it pays off in like a just crazy sequence like this, I don't like.
Yeah.
I mean, this movie would have been a masterpiece without that. But there's just like, I mean, I knew the image of like his floating head with the spiral behind it even before I'd seen it. Like,
yeah.
There's just, it's clearly a sequence with a legacy at this point. I think it's because everybody watched it and was like, what a trip.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just imagine watching that in the 50s where like you just didn't see stuff like that. I can't even imagine.
Well, apparently it wasn't super well received right off the bat.
Yeah.
No.
I was reading up on
I wonder why. Between that and the ending, I don't blame people.
We just had a comment from Brian Valco. A woman from the 18th century Spanish mission named Carlotta is blonder than I would have guessed. Very true.
It's a great point.
Very, very true.
But it spooked me nonetheless.
It's because it's Hitchcock.
Yeah.
It's gotta be blonde.
That was another thing that I did want to talk about is like you can almost make like the Hitchcock and blonde women or like Tarantino and women's feet. like the obsession is there, but it does feel like there's a self-awareness in this movie to me with Hitchcock where like, I mean, it is a genuine observation that goes like, obviously it's beyond coincidence. And it's like, no, like Psycho, The Birds, Vertigo, North by Northwest, Rear Window. He only cast blonde women or women who would dye their hair for him. There's the Bond girl and there is the Hitchcock blonde. It's like you can type that into Google and Google will recognize what you're talking about. And it did feel like there was almost like a meta kind of self-awareness to Jimmy Stewart's character's obsession with it, of like whenever he's like, you can dye your hair, right? Like surely you can't care about that. It feels like, I don't know, that the need, and then hearing about like from Kim Novak about like, oh yeah, there were things that had to be this way and that and blah blah blah. It felt like there was a relatability that he had to that of like, there is a way that this is to be and you're to dress like this and blah blah blah. And like, because Kim Novak, who was like apparently like one of the biggest stars at the time, didn't want to wear the gray dress. She was like, I don't think I'm going to look good in this. It's blah, blah, blah. It's not like, I forget all the reasons, but she was like, I'd rather not wear this and blah, blah, and that. And Hitchcock was like, you will wear this. You'll wear it how I want you to wear it. You will do your hair how I want the hair and blah, blah, blah. And he was like, this is how this is going to look. And so it's the fact that makes it into the script that way just feels like Hitchcock's kind of working through some stuff himself.
That also the scene where like we've had a little while where Jimmy Stewart's character is trying to recreate I keep forgetting her name. Madeline was trying to recreate Madeline, and at the store and all that stuff, and then they're finally back in the hotel room, and she's like almost got it, but the hair isn't quite right, and she like finally is just like, okay, resigned to it, gives up on it, and goes into the bathroom. When the shot where she comes out and it is revealed that and she is now basically, for all intents and purposes, that is now Madeline again, is like that whole shot right there with the music that happened. It was just like a moment, and it was like beautiful and horrifying at the same time. But like the actual shot of it, I was like, wow.
I love like the
good
green glow on her is
yes
like
she looks ghost-like.
Yes,
it looks like a phantom walking out of the bathroom.
See, man, there's so many shots in this where like I keep thinking, I'm like, I really want to mention this one, I want to mention this one, but like we're gonna be here forever if we do.
Well, the shot of just her silhouette at the window with
the green behind her. Oh.
Also, another random shot that blew my mind. Whenever Jimmy Stewart is escaping the tower, and it's just like a huge, like extreme wide angle, like a top-down view of the tower.
Oh,
and
yeah.
You see like just everyone's like ants, like just like running around and stuff. I thought that was amazing.
You can see everybody climbing up the ladder to get the body, but then Jimmy Stewart running out. You can see every angle, but just in this one awesome shot.
Yeah, I was like, dude, that goes hard.
Yeah. One of the shots that really blew my mind was right after she steps out of the bathroom and she's made up as Madeline. That kiss was like, just incredible, as it's just the camera is turning or revolving around them, and then they're back in the stables at the carriage, and he looks up and he realizes like this moment is like it's exactly what he wanted in that moment had she not gone up the bell tower. Like he's been able to go back in time and like stop that moment from happening, just as the whole, and apparently it was all done through like back projection and whatnot. But I just the way the camera was allowed to like take the full spin around the kiss as the music swelled, I thought was, and to have done the scene change like mid kiss was just flooring. Hitchcock's interpretation of that scene is kind of wild.
Really?
It's pretty racy.
Oh,
yeah. Okay. That interview with Truffaut is really, really good.
I'll have to watch. I'll have to watch that for sure.
Yeah. We got a couple more comments in here. Let's see. Slasher Fred was a lot of movies today use the term Hitchcockian, which is slang meaning for a movie that uses elements that sound very similar to a Hitchcock movie. And like speaking of, James talked about this in one of our group chats, but this was the film that invented the dolly zoom, or like the vertigo effect, which for some reason I never put that two and two together. Like I knew the term from hearing it in a bunch of film classes. I know what it is. I even used it in one of my short films. Didn't realize that vertigo was the one that invented it. I thought it just meant because of like the way like the camera is warped and everything, but Nope, it's because of this film. So I thought that was really cool.
It's from this film, and they used it for the Vertigo,
Yeah.
the actual effect of Vertigo.
Yeah.
And it's so effective too. Those shots are amazing.
Awesome.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's incredible. And then my good old buddy Nicholas, or Nick, he said, when are you guys gonna watch Knights of Cabiria and talk about that? I have not seen it yet. I've only 8.5 is Fellini, right? Yeah, that's the only Fellini film I've seen. But I'll definitely have to put that one on my watch list.
I've never actually heard of that one, to be honest.
I haven't either.
That's next on my Fellini watch on the Criterion box set.
Ooh, maybe we'll have to do an episode on that. And then Brian said, I do like just wandering around San Francisco. He also said a lot of aimless wandering around in this movie.
I love the line. We haven't even. I feel like there's so many great things in this that like I'm just thinking, oh man, did we cover this enough? But
I know.
Just the dialogue. There's so many great pieces of dialogue in it, and I love whenever she's at her car and she was there to bring the thank you note. And he's like, she's saying, you know, oh, I'm just going to go off and wander. And he's like, well, you know, I was going to wander. It'd be a shame if you're wandering and I'm wandering and we couldn't do wandering together, or however he puts it. She's like, well, I think when two people wander together, it's no longer wandering. It's, you know, it's going somewhere. And, but yeah, I love that whole, like the initial awkward, intriguing bit at the apartment, and then like seeing her again in the broad daylight. I love both of those conversations.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like that's a mainstay with at least the ones that I've seen so far, but the Hitchcock movies that I've seen have incredible dialogue, and like to the point where the dialogue scenes tend to be just my favorite parts. And like, I mean, Rear Window is almost all dialogue, right? It's just there's so much talking, and they're just in that one room, and it's incredible. And even like Psycho, there's a scene where
Norman,
I almost said Harry Harry Bates, because that's one of my pastors. But Norman Bates and I can't remember the main girl's name, but they are talking, and it's like one of their first extended conversations. I mean, it's really uncomfortable, but it's also like, I don't know, the dialogue in it is just fantastic. And so it just seems like every one of these movies I watch, I'm just like, it's almost like a guarantee I'm in for some really rich dialogue.
yeah,
And that's so, I just, one of my favorite things when a movie doesn't have to do anything to be interesting other than talk. I love that so much.
Yeah, like I think that's, I mean, like Hitchcock is no stranger to great dialogue, but I really, really love the dialogue in this film. There's a line in particular. I'll try and look it up real quick because I want to like get it word for word, but I really like it, and especially in the context of this film, I think it's really great. Let's see. It's whenever they're it's the I was about to say campfire scene, the fireplace scene. He's talking to her, and she asks, "You live alone?" One shouldn't live alone. And then Jimmy Stewart says, some people prefer it, you know. And I think it was like a really good way of like mirroring how he was like kind of like, I don't know, hesitant with the women that he was around, like clearly like Midge was like I like they, you know, we obviously know they had a history, but like Midge still had feelings for him, but like he was like very like standoffish in that way.
It's
Um
really, oh, sorry.
okay, good.
I was just gonna say their relationship was really interesting because they were engaged apparently in college, and it said that she was the one who called it off, and that he's like, I'm still available, but the actual dynamic between the two makes it
Feel like the
feel
opposite.
like,
Yeah.
like she, it felt like, and I don't know if I'm reading too much into it, but it almost felt like there was this unspoken understanding that he's the reason things aren't happening, and she kind of is just humoring him and letting him say like, oh, I'm still available, you like
Uh-huh.
that she's like, okay, like for the sake of like avoiding awkwardness and not having to call you out on this, I'll go along with pretending that
Right.
that you're open and available to this, because it feels very clear to me that the interest is there for her if he were to just.
Right.
And the irony of a sweetheart like Midge, who's also beautiful,
Yes.
like that, just being willing to like be with him. The irony that like that's there, and it is a fake persona that he ultimately falls in love with. It's this unreal thing
Yeah.
that is the only thing he can really. Because even Judy, isn't he's not able to actually fall in love with Judy.
Right.
Yeah. Because she killed who he thought he was in love with.
So, man,
this movie has so many layers to it.
Scotty's really messed up, man.
Yeah.
One of the things Hitchcock said, like, is the reason, because it's based off of a French novel, and he takes a lot of liberties, but he said the reason he wanted to adapt it is the idea that he found most compelling was trying to fashion a living woman into your memory of somebody who's dead, of like trying to make a living person live out like a ghost.
Yeah.
And he's like, in the interview, he's like, if you really press this far, he's trying to maintain a love with a dead woman. And he's like, if you there's something bordering necrophilic with his love here. And I was like, oh, well, Hitchcock said it. It's not some sort of weirdo interpretation out there. He's like,
yeah,
it's like, oh, that's, if you really think about it, he is trying to find ways for his love for a dead woman to physically endure.
That's why I brought that Fringe episode up.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I felt that. That's
crazy.
why it's so uncomfortable.
Oh man.
I'm just looking at shots from the movie, like on my phone. It's just we could just talk about like 100 of them right now.
Seriously.
But
another one, while we're on that topic real quick, the scene where she's in the flower shop and he opens up the door behind the building, and it's just the shadow, and then it reveals, oh man, what a transition. It's so freaking cool. Yeah, that was one of my favorites.
Things he did.
Vibes. I guess before we like get ready to wrap up, one final thing. I was curious about what you guys thought about it. The use of color in this film is like super, super intentional. And I was really curious what you guys thought the red and the green symbolized, because throughout the film we see Jimmy Stewart wearing green and red. We also see Madeline / Carlotta / Judy wearing green and red. And then, you know, we've got like red doors, we've got the Golden Gate Bridge, we've got green here, green there. What do you guys think that means?
I early on I was like, I want to be on the lookout for some kind of significance, and I can't say that I have anything nailed down. The one moment where I was like, okay, I feel like something important was just kind of like exposed through color was another color that appears like less frequently, but early on is blue. And whenever they're at the red room, Jimmy Stewart is in this beautiful blue jacket, and it pops on the screen. And Kim Novak walks out in the beautiful green dress, and so like they're introduced, and then he's wearing blue in his original scene on the rooftop and whatnot. Yeah. And then he's following her while wearing blue. The initial scene, or no, the scene of him following her that ends with her jumping into the bay. He's following her in blue, and she's in the green dress, and she's driving the green car. And it was a moment where I'm like, I feel like something happened there. I can't say I know it or that I got my finger put on it, but after she jumps in, he goes in and gets her, and we cut to them at the apartment. It shows the kitchen where all of her clothes are, and she's now got a blue dress hung up, ready to be worn, and he's wearing a green sweater. So between her jumping in the river and like that initial tailing sequence, it was he was blue, she was green. She jumps in, he brings her back to the apartment, and their colors switch. And he's wearing a green sweater. The pillows on his couch are green. It's a green light that's shining through his back window. And her colors are blue that are waiting for her in the kitchen. So I'm like, I can't say that, that means XYZ, but it felt, for a movie that just has all of these colors popping, for those colors to feel swapped in that moment after the jump, felt like there's some significance.
Yeah, that's really interesting, actually. For me, the one that popped out, because I'm like you, James, I figured it feels like there's some intentionality, like a lot of intentionality with this, but I don't have a firm grasp on much of it. The scene that popped out for me was what I just talked about a minute ago with the hotel room. I feel like the green is related somehow to his madness or something, or it's because when you look at that silhouette of her sitting there, maybe not even madness, maybe more just like
the obsession.
She
is always draped in green
because the drapes behind her are green, and then the silhouette. When she walks out of the bathroom as Madeline again, there's that green tint again. It just feels like there's something with that and the green. So I do wonder if green is like the obsession color or something in this movie, and I'd like to watch it again and see like how often that happens. But I feel like, to me, that scene was really the most like, I feel like I should be watching greens right now. And every time I saw it, it was with her like that, and I was like, there's something there.
Yeah. Well, it feels like the movie cues us up to like notice green. Like, we're in that initial scene in the red room where you've got noticeable colors where it's just beautifully red everywhere, and he's got his blue dinner jacket, and then in the sea of red you just have this emerald green dress walk out, and then in the tailing scene you've got, I'm sure that like they shot on the seats of or on the streets of San Francisco. So you've got all these normal cars, and then you've got this shiny emerald green Rolls Royce. So it always feels like green is always kind of like is the color to watch. It's like our eyes are kind of trained to be like, oh, green, green, green. What's going on? What's going on? Like he is being told to follow the car, and so we're even told, hey, watch out for this green, like you follow it wherever it turns.
Yeah, I didn't really take away I couldn't really figure out what the colors meant, because part of me is like maybe green is obsession, but at the same time, like I found it interesting that like Jimmy Stewart is wearing the green in the when they're in the fireplace scene, and then like just having like,
and that's the scene where he falls in love with her.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Like, so I'm like, what does that mean? Because like if the green is so associated with her, what does that mean if he's wearing it? And like there's also like the flip side of like, oh, okay, well, like there's so much red associated with him and with his house. What does it mean whenever her necklace is like that ruby like gem, you know? So I couldn't really put my finger on what the colors represent. Because I know like they obviously like it's very symbolic, but I kind of like the idea that it's left more ambiguous than not.
I was gonna say, or he's just effing with us,
or maybe he is. I mean, he already did with a lot of this film, so he could be. Oh man.
But yeah, I want to go have dinner at Ernie's. Not gonna lie.
Yeah, that place looked awesome.
Yeah,
seriously. And apparently that was a set that recreated an act. Like Ernie's was a real place, and they just recreated it on the lot.
Nice.
That's awesome.
I want to go to that.
Well, I guess we can start wrapping up now. Do you guys have like any final thoughts?
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it, and I need to watch it again.
Yeah. It feels like, to me, where a lot of other Hitchcock films would end would be we'd get the big reveal of her confessing kind of to the audience about the crime, and then kind of a little epilogue, and it would have ended there. And for this to have only really been the introduction to the second half and be all about this obsession and just the psychological state of mind this guy was in. This feels so different for Hitchcock in a way that I really, really love. And I get why it's a film that has stood out a bit from an already like almost head to toe iconic filmography. And man, I'm glad I watched it finally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't wait. I can't wait to watch it again, and I can't wait to keep watching more of his films. I feel like so far, just with Psycho and Rear Window and this, all three films are way different. Like, there's not a single one where it's like, yes, I see, Hitchcockian thing like patterns showing up. I see it, but he's not a one-trick pony. This guy is doing some crazy stuff and very, very different premises every time. And I can't wait. I'll probably just go ahead and do Rope next because I own it and it's Jimmy Stewart again. And
it's awesome.
Yeah, and so I'll probably just do that one next because I'm like, let's just keep going with the Jimmy Stewart. And
I do really want you to watch The Birds though, because I'm curious what you'll.
I have it too. I bought like a whole like line of his movies, assuming I would love them.
Yeah,
I hope you love the birds. I love the birds.
it's fantastic.
Yeah, I'll get to them.
But yeah, I'm with y'all. I'm a massive fan of this. I think it's incredible, and it's just wild to say that, like, you know, he's done Psycho, he's done Rear Window, he's done Rope, he's done The Birds. Like, there's so many that you can mention. A lot of people love North by Northwest. I haven't watched it yet, but he's got so many iconic films.
When you watch North by Northwest, you're gonna rethink From Russia with Love and be like, "Wow,
really,
really,
that movie takes a lot from North by Northwest."
Okay,
I respect. But yeah, like, just he's got so much iconic films in his filmography. So Vertigo just being another one that's in there, but like also very different than the rest of his work. It's just awesome. It's been such a joy, like, watching his filmography, and there's so many others that are beloved that I haven't watched yet. Like, I know, like, it was mentioned in the chat that about Strangers on a Train. I'm super pumped to watch that one. So I'm gonna have to get back onto some more Hitchcock watches soon, because I'm definitely in that mood now. But yeah, thanks for everyone who tuned in tonight. It's always fun, as always, engaging with you guys in the comments. And then for those of you listening on the podcast feed, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't already, so you can join in our conversations. We stream, every week on Tuesday nights at 10 p.m. Eastern time. And yeah, thanks for everyone who tuned in. Go support your local theater. Watch The Brutalist if you can find it at your theater.
you can find it.
It's had what a weird release it's had. But yeah, until next time. Bye. I forgot what I was gonna